This pattern is Pavimento of Paris, derived from France. We traveled to regions around the Paris area, specifically in front of the Eiffel Tower. If you've ever been there, you notice that there are large fields, and on most of the streets are out of these granite cobbles. So what we did is we took the actual granite cobbles, we cast natural textures from those granite cobbles, and we were able to fabricate this interesting tool called Pavimento of Paris. This tool dimension is roughly 4 foot in width by approximately 20 inches in height, depending on where you're measuring it on the radius point. So not only the texture is very authentic, but also the way that we've constructed the grout joints, it gives it a sense of realism. This set includes 6 rigid tools. It includes 1 floppy or flexible tool, which is great for getting up into tight areas, perhaps up against a building or columns. It includes a left and a right quarter tool. The set also includes a left and a right half tool. It includes a top tool, the bottom tool. It also includes a 6-inch border, a stack bond border, which these little granite cobbles are 4 inches by 4 inches in diameter. The tool also comes with 3 individual stones, which is really great for finishing off a pattern. Maybe you're up against a wall, so you can just use 1 stone if needed. In addition to that, this set includes a 2 foot by 2 foot touch-up skin in the matching granite cobble texture, a 1 foot by 1 foot touch-up skin cut on a 45, great for stair risers or to get into tight areas. And it also includes the matching touch-up roller to detail your grout joints. Let's go show you how this unique texture works. Pavimento of Paris is a tool that you may want to practice in our sand pit here. Remember, compact the sand, wet it down, and you'll get the perfect imprint. The reason for that is this pattern, unlike a lot of the other textures, has many different filler pieces. We have quarter tools, we have half tools, top and bottom tools. And as you see, this is a really unique set of tools. And what it enables the craftsman to do is not have to hand tool the perimeter. One other important feature if you're using this pattern, number 1, your forms need to be square, which you can either do by pulling a 3, 4, 5, or simply pulling diagonals. It needs to run square. But the unique thing about this, if you set your forms to the proper width, there's virtually no hand tooling. Let us show you how it's done. Here is an example of how efficient this pattern is. We start off by installing our 4-inch granite stacked bond cobble border, which is then followed by our quarter tool, which ultimately starts our whole pattern. Once we've applied the quarter tool, we then interlock what we call the top tool. And as you can see, this defines the outline. Once the top tool has been applied, we then start off with our half tool, which will be followed by a full Pavimento of Paris tool. We're working on our panel for Pavimento of Paris. A couple of real important observations. This was yesterday's pour. This was the rotating Venetian marble. And depending on the span of the areas that you're pouring, you always want to isolate the new pour from the old pour. So what we did is we put what we call an expansion joint to isolate the 2 pours. Real important though, before you nail your expansion joint on, we always like to drape the plastic behind the expansion joint and then nail the expansion joint. The last thing we want is our colors or today's concrete to contaminate a new pour. Another real important consideration is you'll notice that we covered the whole slab. We didn't have to in terms of contaminating it. We could have probably only covered, say, 4 or 5 feet. However, we would have got a very distinct cure line. So we went ahead and covered the whole panel. The release agent is still on the surface, so we get a uniform curing. We don't want to see a distinct cure line. So the next step, Dave's getting ready. He's CH 120 625. We're going to be using the color hardener, which is Dover blue. In preparation, we're going to apply our 60% of our color hardener, the Dover blue, bull float that in, and then we'll come back over that with a 40% application, bull float that in, and then prior to applying the powder release, we're going to accent it with color hardener with a medium gray. we are on our Pavimento of Paris. We're going to the next step, and Cody and Dave, they're putting down their Dover blue color hardener. Remember, on this application, it's 60% of the material. I want you to watch their technique. It's a definite, unique technique. You'll notice that Dave and Cody both fluff up the color hardener. You don't want it consolidated. You don't want to throw it in a big clump. So it's almost, you take a whole handful. You always want to throw from at least below your belt, preferably down here by your knees, and it starts under and finishes over, and you actually let the material roll off the tips of your fingers. So they're going to cover this up with their first application of the color hardener, and then we'll go to the next step, which is to bull float it. On our Pavimento of Paris panel, you can see the guys. Dave's been bull floating our first application of color hardener. Cody's addressing the edges with a hand float. He's using a resin float. And then once again, we're going to run the hand edger so it turns the color over the edge. As a reminder, what you want to do is always check to see if the color hardener is wetting out. That's really important. If the color hardener is not wetting out properly, there's no way you're going to be able to effectively bull float or float the edges. One way to check it is simply put your fingers for about 5 seconds right on the first application of color hardener, and it should draw moisture right to the tips of your fingers, and you should see 5 little shiny points. Right here is a great indicator that the color hardener is wetting out, it's absorbing bleed water from the mix. This is what you need to look for. All right, Cody and Dave are now applying the remaining 40% of the Dover blue color hardener. Again, as a recap, they put on 60%. It bull floated in beautifully, which meant that we had the right mix design. We're putting it on the right time and the proper amount of material. So they're going to go around the slab with the remaining 40%. The last thing we'll do after that is we'll bull float it, and then of course apply our accent color, and then we'll get into the stamping process. One of our final steps before stamping on our Pavimento of Paris area is Dave again is bull floating, Cody is hand edging, and then floating in the edges. They're working in the last or the second application of color hardener of Dover blue. This is the 40%. And once they've worked this whole slab in, we're just going to put a little bit of an accent color and move on to our powder release, and then again the stamping. Well, John and I have shown you how effective learning in sand can be. So we've shown you when you get a new pattern, go ahead and wet the sand, compact the sand, and do all of your figuring on wet sand. If you mess up, you just erase it real easy. But now we want to show you, before we actually go to the fresh concrete for our Pavimento of Paris, how effective this design really is. John has already started with what represents a side border tool. Let's show him the actual texture of it. So we've got 6x6 granite cobbles. And if you wanted to, you could go across this way with a 4x4 stack bond. And now, here's how effective these tools are. We'll start right with our quarter tool. John will piece it in. From there, we'll throw in our top tool. Again, he'll come right in with what we call the half tool. And this would be considered the right tool. This is the side of the border here. Now we'll have him just throw in a full tool. Now he's going to throw in what we call the bottom tool. Now here is what really makes this pattern unique. There's no need to form set out independent borders. So you can do all one monolithic pour and create a border, because when John put this bottom tool here, now he can take a border tool. So this border could go right across the middle of your driveway, and then what he's going to do, he's going to come with the top tool, which also has a straight edge up against your border tool, and then you could take off with your next course of full tools. So this is a really unique design, Very effective for the professional, not only for your edges, but putting a uniform border right across the middle of your driveway. And if you do your calculations right, when you do all of your stamping, you've already got your layout for your contraction or your control joint. So you can saw cut right down the middle of this straight linear line. Once we've applied our flash color, Dave is coming back with the Fresno and he's just working it in. Again, Cody is coming around the edges. Remember, don't ever skip a step. Every time you do something to the slab with the color hardener, it's followed by the edges with a hand edger, so it keeps the edges clean and level. You can see how nice this looks working that in, and that just provides our accent color. Okay, here we are on our Pavimento of Paris, getting down to the final stages before we stamp. We've troweled in our accent color of medium gray color hardener. Slab looks beautiful. You should get in the routine of checking at what stage of plasticity it is prior to stamping. Not every stamp is going to be the same stage. On a real deep texture, Pavimento of Paris is a pretty aggressive texture. You're going to need to get on the concrete a little earlier. So the old traditional way is by pushing down like this. You should be able to push down about 1/8 to 3/16, or another good gauge is this tendon in your hand. If you feel the plasticity of your skin, that's about what you're looking for. Then you come back, trowel those lines out, and you can see up here, Dave's applying the powder release, and John is addressing the edges with the matching texture. Very important. Always go around the perimeter and address the edges. One last tip before we get started in placing our stamps. You'll notice over here, we already have preconditioned the stamping mats. Very important. You need to stay ahead of the game. The guys have already laid out the stamps. They've brushed a layer of powdered release over it. So as soon as we address the edges, we're ready to start placing tools. Here we go on our Pavimento of Paris. We've applied our light layer of powdered release, dark gray. Dave has already laid 2 of our corresponds. Before we lay that in, let me check something. It's always a good idea to check how much pressure you want to apply. So I'm going to evaluate the tool. That looks great. Remember, the release will lighten up regardless of the color. Notice how where they've textured, it has a much lighter appearance. Over here where it's dark, that means we haven't depressed any tools down. So this is a great indicator to check the depth of your stamp. Now, Dave and John are going to come right in on our Pavimento of Paris design here. They're going to start with the quarter tool. They're going to go all the way across the top edge of this, and if we've calculated our forms right, there should be little if any detailing because the forms were set to the appropriate width of a given amount of tools. So this is a real nice feature, having the quarter design, the top tool, and now you come in with a half tool, and that's going to start our full row of tools. Now, the concrete is at the perfect stage. Remember, this pattern happens to be a little bit deep, so the amount of pressure that's needing to be applied is just what we call walking the tools in. Now, I want you to notice John's going to lift this tool, and just the weight of them walking the tools in is just about enough weight, maybe lightly tamp it. So this is a good indicator. You can actually hear the concrete crunching. You can hear it crunching, which means it's still a little bit soft. However, with the amount of detailing that we're needing to do on this panel, we want to go ahead and walk the tools in so we have enough time to do our border right across the middle of this pour. On this design, Pavimento of Paris, we have a Roman numeral 1, 2, and 3. So you don't see the repeating stones on the bottom. So there's a 1, 2, and 3 on this pattern, and you just keep leapfrogging them as you advance the stamps across the surface. All right, here we come across the top. John is going to pop in his half tool, which is it's a left half tool. Then he's going to come in here with his quarter tool, And if we've done our calculating properly, we come in with our 4-inch stack bond, and it should more or less end up right on this expansion joint. And well, looky there, we're right on the money, ready to go. So we're going to have a nice stack bond going down either side, and we'll keep this process rolling. We're about halfway down our pour. I'm going to hand Dave this bottom tool. We'll slam it right in here. And so what that does is now it allows us, with a straight edge, John's going to come on in here, demonstrate our 6-inch cobblestone border right across the middle of our pour here. And so now we're able to go and continue right on across. All right. Okay, here we are on our Pavimento of Paris pour. Looks beautiful with all the borders. We have the 6-inch cobble going across the middle. John is using the flex mat, the floppy tool here. It's just easier to handle when you come over the edge of a form like we have here. The next step is detailing with some touch-up chisels and rollers. All right, the stamping has been completed. Dave is back over here doing the last little bit of touch-up detailing using the touch-up roller that's provided with this set of Pavimento of Paris. Go ahead and don't overlook the importance of this step. This is going to really just bring that last definition to your stamp job. So it's just a good idea to roll out the joints where the stamps come together. Okay. We've finished cleaning our Pavimento of Paris. As a recap, we used Dover blue color hardener flashed with a medium gray color hardener, and then we used a dark gray powdered release agent. It is a good idea to, once you've cleaned all of the powder release off, step back, get a bird's eye perspective, and look at the whole panel. There may be areas that might require a little bit more aggressive cleaning. Maybe you have a spot that's a little darker and lighter, so you want to unify the entire surface. The next step after this is the surface needs to totally dry, and then check with the Brickform specifications on the sealers in terms of the cure time. The next step would be for us to put the sealer down. However, what we're going to do is wet it down so you get a perspective of what this color looks like natural, but then we're going to come back and just put a little bit of accent stains on this before we seal it. Okay. We hope you've enjoyed our chapter on Pavimento of Paris. With some additional practice and some good color selections, you can also produce some beautiful stamped concrete.